The Apache could sleep through nights colder than -10 degrees Fahrenheit without fire. Their secret? It's stranger than you think, and the last survival trick in this list will blow your mind. 1. Why Apache camps could stay warm without a single flame in sight. The high desert of the Southwest is a master of extremes, searing heat by day, bone-shattering cold by night. Winter temperatures could plunge below -10 degrees Fahrenheit in higher elevations, and yet Apache camps often glowed with life, laughter, and movement without a single visible fire. How? Part of the answer lay in strategy, part in secrecy. Firelight was a beacon to enemies. The Apache, hunted at times by both rival tribes and the U.S. cavalry in the 19th century, knew that smoke in the sky was an invitation to disaster. So they learned to create warmth without revealing themselves. They chose camp locations with natural windbreaks, rock outcrops, canyon walls, or dense stands of pinon and juniper. These formations could block up to 80% of wind chill, making the cold far more survivable. But the real secret? Microclimates. They would camp in low valleys that trapped warm air at night, sometimes raising temperatures by as much as 10 degrees Fahrenheit compared to surrounding plains. They also built compact shelters, holding body heat inside like clay ovens. In fact, ethnographers noted that a fully occupied Apache wickiup, just 8 feet wide, could reach temperatures above 60 degrees Fahrenheit inside, even when it was freezing outside. No logs, no fire pit, just human ingenuity. And this was only the first layer of their survival puzzle, because how they slept in that warmth is even stranger. 2. The sleeping trick that made sub-zero nights feel almost comfortable. Apache nights in January could be merciless, wind slicing through the mountains, temperatures dipping toward -15 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet inside their low, dome-shaped wickiups, families sometimes slept so warm that they woke up sweating. The secret wasn't just the shelter, it was the way they slept. Instead of spreading out under separate blankets, entire families slept in tight circles, bodies pressed together, layered like nesting bowls. Heat transfer between people is no small thing. A human body radiates about 100 watts at rest, meaning 6 sleepers could produce as much warmth as a small electric heater. In an enclosed 8-foot structure, that heat built up quickly. They laid down bedding in layers. First thick juniper boughs to insulate from the frozen ground, then buffalo robes or woven yucca mats, then soft hides. Children were often placed in the center of the circle, wrapped in multiple hides while adults formed an outer wall of warmth. Some oral accounts describe two-skin sleeping, 2 hides sewn together with fur sides facing inward, creating a kind of primitive sleeping bag. Trapped air between layers acted like modern insulation, cutting heat loss dramatically. In the morning, moisture from breath would sometimes freeze along the hide edges, forming a thin rime of frost, a reminder of just how cold it was outside their living cocoon. But warmth and sleep meant survival, and to make that possible in the first place, they had to wear their walls during the day. That's where the next story begins. 3. How animal skins became walking, wearable cabins. By midwinter, the Apache weren't just wearing clothes. They were carrying their homes on their backs. Every hide and stitch was chosen for survival. Deer, elk, and antelope hides formed the foundation, but buffalo robes, when traded from plains tribes, were the crown jewel. A single full-grown buffalo hide could weigh 30 to 60 pounds, yet insulate so well that it could keep out -20 degrees Fahrenheit winds. They didn't simply drape hides, they engineered them. Large pieces were sewn into long, wraparound robes with sinew thread, sometimes doubled with fur inward and outward for maximum warmth. Women often lined them with rabbit fur, prized for its heat retention despite its fragility. 30 to 40 rabbit pelts might go into one winter robe. They also made leggings, moccasins, and mittens from thick tanned hides. Moccasins were sometimes double-soled with rawhide and stuffed with dry grass or shredded bark. Primitive socks that could be replaced daily to keep feet dry. In high mountain camps, some warriors wore hooded capes lined entirely in coyote fur, the hood pulled low to trap face heat. Unlike rigid coats, these garments allowed mobility for hunting and scouting, critical when fire couldn't be lit for fear of giving away their position to enemies or soldiers. A well-made winter robe could last for years, handed down through families, patched and softened again and again. Some hides still smelled faintly of the smoke from summer tanning fires, an echo of warmth carried deep into the frozen months. And yet, even with the best clothing, there was another weapon against the cold, one built right into the earth itself. 4. The underground hideouts that trapped heat like ovens. When the temperature on the high plains dipped to -15 degrees Fahrenheit and the wind whipped like knives, the Apache had a solution older than the forts chasing them. Go beneath the earth. They built pit houses, sometimes called dugouts, carved into sheltered hillsides or riverbanks. Each was a shallow chamber, 4 to 6 feet deep, often oval, roofed with logs, brush, and packed earth, making it nearly invisible from above. These hideouts could retain astonishing warmth. Soil just a few feet underground maintains a more constant temperature, around 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, even in midwinter. Once a small stone-heated fire was lit inside, carefully vented through a narrow smoke hole, the interior could rise to 70 degrees Fahrenheit in under an hour. They insulated walls with woven grass mats, buffalo hides, or even layers of dry leaves. The entrance, a narrow crawl tunnel, worked like an airlock, keeping heat trapped. According to 19th century military reports, some could house 10 to 12 people in tight quarters, often lying shoulder to shoulder under layered robes. Inside, storage pits kept jerky, dried berries, and roasted mesquite beans safe from frost. Children would sometimes sleep directly on beds of dried sagebrush, whose aromatic oils helped deter insects. In some winters, the Apache spent weeks underground, emerging only at night to hunt or scout. Their ability to vanish like this baffled soldiers. Many campaigned for months without finding a single occupied shelter. But warmth alone wasn't enough. Apache winter survival depended on direction. The way they positioned their camps was no accident, and it unlocked another layer of heat management. 5. Why every winter camp faced the same exact way. Apache winter camps weren't placed randomly. They were aligned with precision, like ancient solar observatories. Almost every winter shelter, whether a brush wickiup, a hide tent, or an underground dugout, faced east or southeast. Why? To capture the very first rays of morning sun. In the high desert, temperatures at dawn could plunge to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. But as soon as sunlight touched the camp, the outer walls absorbed radiant heat. Animal hides, stretched taut over wooden frames, acted like solar panels. Darkened and smoke-cured hides absorbed warmth faster. Within an hour of sunrise, the inside temperature could rise by 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit without lighting a single fire. There was another reason, spiritual and psychological. Among the Apache, facing the sunrise was tied to Hoju, the concept of harmony and balance. Greeting the dawn each day wasn't just ritual, it was morale. In freezing winters, mindset could mean the difference between endurance and collapse. Camps were also strategically positioned against natural windbreaks, boulder outcrops, canyon bends, or the leeward side of hills, further amplifying warmth retention. Anthropologists studying Chiricahua Apache camps in the 1880s noted that snowdrifts were often minimal at these sites, suggesting they picked microclimates with up to 40% less wind chill than surrounding areas. By dawn, hunters could leave warmed and alert, while others conserved energy inside. But east-facing camps had another hidden advantage. It worked with one of their strangest tools for keeping heat long after the sun was gone. 6. The stones that held summer heat in the dead of winter. Long before electric blankets or modern insulation, the Apache mastered a trick that turned simple rocks into life-saving heaters. All through the scorching summer months, they collected large, dense stones. Basalt and granite were favorites, because these could store heat longer than porous rock. In autumn, before the first freeze, these stones were seasoned by leaving them in direct sunlight for weeks. This wasn't superstition, it dried them completely, preventing cracks when later heated. When the cold set in, the stones were placed near the day's small, carefully hidden fire or even buried under embers. Once hot, they were wrapped in rabbit skins rawhide, or woven yucca mats. Here's the magic. A 30-pound granite stone, once heated to around 300 degrees Fahrenheit, could release usable warmth for nearly 8 hours when insulated. Apache families would tuck these into bedding pits or underground dugouts, creating pockets of radiant heat without visible flames, critical when enemy scouts might spot smoke. Some stones even became family heaters, passed down through generations, their smooth surfaces darkened by decades of use. Oral histories from Mescalero Apache elders recall that children learned how to test stone heat with a bare forearm. Too hot to hold meant it could last through most of the night. The ingenuity here wasn't just in staying warm, it was in doing so invisibly, a skill that became essential when warmth had to be traded for survival secrecy. And the same stealth extended to how they cooked without letting enemies know they were even there. 7. How they cooked without smoke, so enemies couldn't find them. Imagine cooking a full meal in the dead of winter and leaving no scent, no smoke, no glow for enemies to track. The Apache perfected this stealth long before modern militaries considered smoke discipline. The method? Earth ovens, deep pits, sometimes over 3 feet wide, dug into dry soil. First, stones were heated with small hidden fires at night or early dawn, when fog or wind could mask any trace of smoke. Once the stones were scorching hot, often over 500 degrees Fahrenheit, the fire was extinguished and the ashes carefully scooped out so no smolder remained. Food, meat, tubers, corn, even cactus pads, was wrapped in layers of agave leaves, yucca fibers, or rawhide. This not only protected it from dirt, but also sealed in moisture. The bundles were placed directly on the hot stones, then covered with soil and sand. Cooking took hours, but when unearthed, the meal was tender, smoky from the stone heat, not burning wood. Why go through this trouble? Because during the Apache's conflicts with Spanish, Mexican, and later U.S. forces, a single wisp of smoke could give away a camp's position for miles in open desert or snowy mountains. Some elders recall winter rabbit stews slow-cooked this way, staying warm underground until morning. In some raids, the earth ovens doubled as storage, bearing excess food so enemies couldn't find it if the camp was forced to move. This secrecy wasn't just about food, it was about survival. And survival also meant crafting clothing that was more than just warm. It could be eaten if necessary. 8. The layered winter clothing that could also be eaten. In the harshest Apache winters, clothing wasn't just for warmth, it could also keep you alive if every scrap of food was gone. This wasn't fashion, it was survival engineering. Apache winter wear often began with a base layer of tanned deer skin or antelope hide, soft enough to trap heat close to the body. Over that came robes and cloaks made from rabbit fur, woven together using sinew or yucca cord. A single rabbit skin blanket could require 40 to 50 pelts, stitched fur side in, trapping pockets of warm air. But here's the part that shocks most people. These garments were sometimes made from edible materials. Some cloaks were reinforced with strips of dried meat, jerky-like bands hidden between fur layers. During famine, these strips could be chewed to provide protein and calories. Even the sinew stitching was edible when softened in water, offering trace nutrients and vital fats. Yucca fiber capes, while not tasty, could be boiled into a starchy, calorie-rich broth if desperation struck. In recorded cases from the late 1800s, families snowed in for weeks boiled their mittens, moccasins, and belts, scraping out every calorie possible. Apache elders remembered the smell, half leather, half stew, filling small shelters when such clothing-turned meal was cooked. It wasn't pleasant, but when the snow was waist-deep and hunting impossible, warmth and food were sometimes the same thing. And yet, as strange as edible clothing sounds, their winter warmth didn't just come from what they wore. The Apache had a game, yes, a game, that could heat your body faster than a roaring fire. 9. The heated game that could raise body temperature in minutes. When the Apache winter nights cut to the bone, temperatures dropping well below freezing, sometimes into the single digits Fahrenheit, they turned to something far stranger than a fire. Games designed to make your blood race. One of the most common was a full-contact winter version of tukwaya, a type of shinny similar to field hockey. The field could be a frozen meadow, sometimes iced over by snowmelt. Players used curved sticks of mesquite or oak and a wooden ball, and there were no teams, just chaos. Within minutes, muscles burned, heart rates spiked, and cold fingers felt alive again. Anthropologist Morris E. Opler recorded in the 1930s that young warriors could play for 2 straight hours in temperatures below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, emerging red-faced and steaming, their breaths fogging like miniature campfires. Some games were even more extreme. In the snow chase, hunters stripped to waistcloths, doused themselves in snow, and ran barefoot across drifts to wrestle for possession of a fur-wrapped bundle. The logic? Shock the body into maximum circulation? Elders claim these games weren't just fun, they were training for battle in winter campaigns. If you could fight, grapple, and sprint in snow without collapsing, you could ambush an enemy camp in January and win. But even with movement and games, the Apache still had one unshakable winter law, something taught to every child by age 6, that could mean the difference between waking up or never waking again. 10. The one winter survival law. Every Apache child learned before. Age 6, among the Western Apache, Mescalero, and Chiricahua bands, there was a rule older than any campfire story. Never sleep with an empty stomach in winter. It wasn't superstition. It was science disguised as tradition. When your body lacks fuel, it slows metabolism to conserve energy. In the desert mountains of Arizona and New Mexico, where winter nights often plunge below 15 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 9 degrees Celsius, that drop in heat production could mean death before sunrise. Even toddlers were taught to eat something, a strip of dried mescal root, a few roasted mesquite beans, or a sliver of venison jerky, before bedding down. Parents told children, the night takes the warm from the hungry first. Food acted as an internal fire, keeping core temperatures stable during the coldest hours between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., when frostbite and hypothermia were most likely. Hunters returning late from patrol would even wake sleeping family members to feed them, knowing the risk was too great. Elders could recite winters where this rule saved whole camps. In 1884, near the White Mountains, an unexpected blizzard buried shelters under 3 feet of snow. While a neighboring group lost 4 people overnight, the Apache camp survived. Every one of them had eaten a fatty deer stew before sleeping. This final law was simple, universal, and unquestioned. And perhaps most telling, no Apache winter tale ended without reminding listeners of it. If this blew your mind, you'll want to see what's next. Click the video on screen and keep uncovering the history no one else dares to tell.